Right, so tonight is the last two chapters of the Book of Iyov, of Job, chapters 41 and 42. And what I'm going to do this time is just get a brief introduction about the importance of this book. You may have heard Francis Bacon, who was an English statesman, he was a lawyer, he was a philosopher, very knowledgeable individual. And there's a saying attributed to him, that knowledge is power. Those who have true knowledge, it empowers them. How does it empower them? It enlightens them. Because in our Torah, knowledge is compared to light. Torah, or. It's a light, it enlightens, it clarifies certain things. A lot of people have lacked this light throughout history. As a result of a lack of light, they've been disoriented. Disoriented, not being able to focus on what really is important in life, in their short life. Disoriented in not recognizing that God is supreme, that He's in charge, that He's the boss, that He created. Disoriented and distracted. And one of the most beautiful prophecies right before Mashiach, around when He comes, will be that Mala'a ha'aretz de'at Hashem kamayim layam mechasim. That knowledge will fill the earth like the waters cover the seas. There will be so much knowledge. And we have begun to see this a little bit in the scientific realm, where ever since approximately 1840, as the Zohar says, the Industrial Revolution began, and so much has been revealed. And I say revealed because it doesn't mean that it's something brand new, it just simply hasn't been discovered. So it has been revealed, information that really was around all the time. It's just that now Hashem allowed for the gates of wisdom, as the Zohar says, to open up. And all of a sudden, wow, we see so many things, we know so much that our previous generations did not know, were not aware of. They knew certain things too that we don't know. They were able to build pyramids. Even today, we're amazed in how they accomplished that. So we're not taking away from their knowledge. They knew things we don't know, for sure. But it is obvious that the way the world has progressed, there's certain things that we have today that they did not have. And life, of course, as a result of all this knowledge, has certain comforts, and we're able to do certain things with much greater ease than it was possible before. All of this is impressive. But you know what? All this knowledge is not the most important knowledge. It's useful for what we need in this physical world, but the more important knowledge is the knowledge of Hashem. Knowing about Hashem, knowing about His creation. And when we talk about the creation, it is important. It really is important to ponder the creation, to observe what is possible, analyze the beauty, the harmony, because this actually strengthens our emunah. This actually enables us to have that light, to be able to see things that we would not. So this is a means. By looking at nature, by analyzing, by seeing how beautifully it is created, how Hashem planned it out so perfectly, with precision, it's very, very impressive. This knowledge is very, very useful to us, because physically, today, Baruch Hashem, we have what we need. We would love to have planes that perhaps go faster than they do, so we can get there quicker. But the knowledge of Hashem, what is life all about? What's the purpose of life? What are we doing here? Why certain things happen that we don't have control over? It would be nice if we were to know this. Iyov had this problem, as we will see towards the end, where he defends himself as to why he put up all these arguments. He wanted to have clarity. He claims, and he's somewhat right, it would have helped him a lot in teaching others, in communicating, convincing others about the truth of Hashem and what He wants us to do, what He expects of us. It would surely help clarity. So in these chapters, Hashem communicates to Iyov directly through a vision and makes it very clear to him. You can't get clearer than prophecy. So therefore He makes it very clear that in reality, man has no way of being able to examine many things about creation in a very, very broad scale. In other words, what we would say, to see the entire picture. We cannot see the entire picture. We can see parts of it. Every little detail in creation requires so much investigation, examination. It's incredible. Man cannot handle all of that. Even the phenomena that is quite frequent, that we see in nature, Hashem tells Iyov, even though they're frequent, you're not able to fully understand and explain them. Today too, with all the progress in science, there's just certain things that science cannot explain, does not fully comprehend. And that is something that we are familiar with. We see it, it happens. We're not fully aware of how it happens. In the previous chapter, we also saw how Hashem communicates with Iyov and tells him that there's tremendous hashgacha, there's tremendous supervision over everything that Hashem created, simply in order not to have any species go extinct. Hashem created certain animals, He wants them around. And for them to survive, there has to be supervision from above. He cannot rely on man alone that he will provide for all the animals and creatures. Who provides for them? Who takes care of them? And Hashem points out to Iyov, even the smallest ones, they're fed. They have what to eat. The more so, if the small ones are taken care of, and Hashem is aware of them, then you can imagine that Hashem is fully aware and takes care of the bigger ones, the more important ones. Man, just because you don't see it, that doesn't prove anything. But if I demonstrate to you clearly how I take care of even the smallest ones, the more so the bigger ones. So, in chapter 41, which is somewhat a continuation of chapter 40, he goes on to describe the Leviathan in great detail. So just to repeat a little bit about what this Leviathan is. If you were to go through the Pesukim word for word, it's a little bit difficult to comprehend. What kind of a creature is this? We don't know of any creature like this. And there are various possibilities. We know it dwells in the oceans. We know it's some sort of big whale or big fish. We have a tradition, yes, a tradition, that there is such a very large, immense animal that we will eventually eat from. The righteous will eat from it when Mashiach comes. Yes, we have such a tradition. Okay, if that's the case, it makes somewhat sense why we don't see it. Based on that tradition, it's something special, unique. There are not too many of them, just one for the most part, and we will see it when Mashiach comes. Okay. But it's also possible that in describing large animals, like dinosaurs in the past, it could be that there was such an animal and it is no longer around. It could be, that's just another possibility. But either way, it is described in great detail. And if you were to go through the various Pesukim, it's a little bit hard to understand. Why does he describe it? And some of the words are hard, but so much detail that it has scales, and the limbs are so strong. What for? Hashem wants to impress upon Iyov. Look how much goes into my creation. Look what I made here. Look what I did. Do you know why I did this? I mean, there's some animals that have incredible capabilities. We spoke a little bit about it last week. Wow. Did this just happen by itself? No. Common sense dictates that there's so much design here, so much intelligent design, as they say these days, intelligent design, that this must be for a reason. Why did Hashem make it so? So he describes how large this Leviathan is, and by doing so, he wants to impress Iyov. Look at these big creatures that I made, and what are you? You're so small compared to this big creature. So be a little humble. When you see something so big, you're humbled. You have to be humble. It says, wow, Hashem made something incredibly large, this large, and it's alive. What's the purpose of it? That's a separate question, but first look at the fact that this is something incredible. So this also is intended to impress upon Iyov the strength, the power of Hashem. Look what Hashem is capable of doing. Look what He did. So from the big creatures, you see somewhat, a little bit of the greatness of Hashem. Even though you could say, I see it from the small ones too, but the more impressive ones say something. In other words, they speak a lot louder. So Hashem says, look what I created. Look what I made over here. Look how big it is. Look how impressive it is. This should be something that should make you think twice before you begin to complain that there's no hashgacha perhaps, that there's no supervision, you can't see it. Look at this. And as a result of seeing all these great creatures, Iyov perhaps would also learn that Hashem has the ability to repay, to reward all the righteous people who perform good deeds in this world. In other words, if you can do that, why can't he do that? Just because you don't see it, that doesn't mean anything. So analyze this, look what Hashem made, and infer from that what else he's capable of doing. And we know that Hashem Kol Yachol, one of the details that describes Hashem is that he's omnipotent, that he can do anything he wants. But if we have any doubts, well, look at some of the things that he created. So Iyov has heard so far how Hashem is mashgiach. He not only created all this, but he also supervises from the smallest into the biggest. And therefore, even man, supposedly, is being supervised. Even though it appears that the wicked people are getting away with it, what does that mean? Where is the supervision there? No police? No one to punish them on the spot? So Iyov struggled with that, and a lot of people do, till this very day, struggle with how could certain things happen? How could Hashem allow certain things to happen? But if you look at the general idea behind the words that Hashem is telling Iyov, you will see that he's saying to him, it's not possible for you, Iyov, to understand why I would leave in this world some of those large and dangerous animals. You have no way of understanding that there needs to be a balance in nature. Not only does every animal have a purpose, there's also a balance. If I remove one of them, that will unsettle the balance. I just read not too long ago about how it's interesting that squirrels sometimes grab the acorns, that fall from the tree, and they take a lot of them. They want to eat it. But what do they do with so many? They store it. Where do they store it? They dig under the earth to hide it. And as a result of the many nuts, many acorns that they have buried, many trees grow. They don't need all of that. They take a lot and they hide it. And as a result of that, many, many trees grow. So Hashem has a way of making trees grow. All kinds of ways. I just gave you one quick example. We can't eliminate one. There's a certain dependency when you learn ecology, if you studied ecology in school. Fascinating topic where you can see how they all depend on each other. Right? The mountain lion will eat deer. The deer will eat certain plants, certain vegetation. And if you remove any one of them, you can only make a change. There's going to be a change that's going to become obvious over time. Remove the wolf, for example, which they did, by the way, in this country. They've actually done many, many tests. Let's reintroduce the grizzly. Let's reintroduce the gray wolf, because they were extirpated. Once upon a time, they were killed off. They were eating the cattle. Ranchers didn't want them. Yeah, but it caused a little bit of a problem with other species. And when you have a lack of what used to be there before, the birds are gone, because the birds were depending on something too. And all the even organisms in the field somehow are thrown off balance. So Hashem wants there to be a balance, and man has no ability to know how this balance works. Today, yes, they do know a little bit more than in the past, but they don't realize how sometimes there's so many additional details that can throw things off balance. So Hashem says, Iyov, if you had all that power that I have, I know what you would do. You would try to eliminate this Leviathan. You would try to go after all the beasts that are wild, that are carnivores. Even though, by the way, the Leviathan is not a carnivore. It doesn't eat meat. But you would go after it. And in a playful way, Hashem says, and the Leviathan would all of a sudden be fearful of you, where he hasn't been fearful of anyone, because no one would dare approach him or examine him or get too close to him. So all of a sudden, if you were given this power, he knows what you would do. And there would be no more deterrent to frighten off anybody from getting close to him. But Hashem is not interested in that. As he will soon explain, I need all of these species where I want them. But now he turns to Iyov and says, as far as all your doubts and your questions and your complaints, who came before me that I perhaps owe him something? Perhaps I have a debt that I have to pay someone who's been around before me? In a humorous way. No one's there before Hashem. In other words, are you asking me to do something because I owe you? In other words, do I owe you an explanation for everything I did? You should be happy that I was kind to you and I created you. I gave you life just for that alone. People don't think about that. Life is a gift. It's special. People sometimes commit suicide. They throw away a gift. Sad. They never really understood what this life is. They think it's an accident. The parents brought me into this world. That's it. The mechanism behind it is much more complicated. Just a man and a woman coming together and producing a child. There's much more involved. There's a soul as well. There's a mission to be accomplished. Everyone, whether it's an animal, whether it's a bug, and the more so the crown of creation, a human being, there's something to accomplish here. Life is purposeful. So here, he's saying to Iyov, I don't owe you anything. I don't have to tell you why I did certain things. It's not like I owe you a debt. Therefore, don't tell me how to handle the Resha'im, the wicked. Hashem, the wicked? Get rid of them. Why don't you just get rid of them? You would have to give Iyov perhaps many derashot, many speeches, lectures as to why they are needed. Hashem doesn't get into that here. He never addressed the question in Sefer Iyov why the righteous have a difficult time or why the wicked sometimes prosper even though they're wicked. The question, even though it was one of the questions that Iyov had, Hashem, in the vision that Iyov has, does not address that question. He basically says, who are you that I need to answer to? Do I owe you anything? Just be happy that I brought you here. Why I should not kill off all the big animals? Who needs them? Or who needs the wicked? It's all pretty much the same question. I don't know anything to anyone, Hashem says. I don't have to give an explanation. However, you should know, indirectly, he basically tells him, there's a need for everything, just like there's a need for certain animals of prey. There's a need for human beings who are not so good too. It would be nice, of course, if everyone was weak and not powerful. If everything was small and simple and not large. Of course. You would not see the greatness of Hashem if that was the kind of world we were living in. When Hashem creates extremes, weak and strong, big and small, righteous and wicked, then you're able to appreciate more Hashem's involvement in this world. Because if you were to fully investigate this matter, you would see how Hashem eventually, at some point, gets back at the evildoers. In other words, that is where you see the greatness of Hashem. You would not see the greatness of Hashem if the world was very boring. No action. You want to see Hashem's involvement, His supervision. You want to see Him interact with this world. Besides big animals, besides evildoers that He will tolerate for a while, you will also see major phenomena like we just saw in Turkey now. Major earthquake. What's that? Oh, it's just a fault. Just a fault. Yeah, those who don't want to believe in Hashem will make up any excuse. But I'll explain a little bit more soon. This is not just a fault. Of course it's a geological fault. We know that. Geologists can prove that. But who pressed the button? Who pulls the trigger? So Hashem is a little bit upset, of course, at Iyov, that how dare he ask that I give over to him permission or the ability, the power to just do whatever he wants so that he should decide how this world should be run. Don't think for a moment that all these big animals just came about for no reason, he says, or accidentally. Never think like that. He did think for a while, in the previous chapters, that somehow my impression is that there's a marechet, there's a system in place. The stars, astrology. And perhaps there's something wrong by his system. He did say that, by the way. So Hashem is telling him, no. Everything is by design, everything is purposeful. I'm behind everything. And I have a need for all of these things, otherwise I wouldn't make them. And therefore I'm going to show you, pay attention, how there's so much detail in this Leviathan as an example. Look at his body. Look at how big he is, how strong he is. Look how everything that he has is bechokhmah. It was done with tremendous wisdom. It makes sense. And that is true with the anatomy of the human being as well. If people were to analyze the design, the function of every organ and limb, they would say, wow, why do we have 5 fingers on every hand? Why 10 altogether? Did you ever think about that? Well, I guess 2 ears and 2 eyes, it makes some sense, because God forbid if one is damaged, at least we have one left. Yeah, but why 10 fingers? Is this some significance to the number 10? Yes, Kabbalistically, of course there is. But we're not going to get into that. But who thinks about these things? Thank God our fingers are working, that's good enough. So Hashem tells Iyov, yes, but that's what I want you to do. Because that will help you. And that will hopefully stop your questions and realize that perhaps there is Hashgacha. Hashem is involved, because look how involved he was in creating these species. Special blessing that we say every time we come out of the bathroom, Asher yatzar et ha'adam bechokhmah. We thank Hashem, we praise Hashem for having created man with such great wisdom, that God forbid if that which is closed would open up, or if that which is open would close up, we cannot live for too long. Rabbis tell us that whoever says that blessing with kavanah, with intent, focus, this will hopefully maintain his health. He won't get sick, because he's thanking Hashem for what he did, for preserving his health too. God forbid, anything can happen that would do away with all that system that we have, the plumbing, the vision, the hearing, all our senses. Something can happen that, God forbid, I just heard, God forbid, unfortunately, a child lost part of his vision, an eye. He was carrying his scissors. We have to be very careful with children. But yes, the limbs, the organs, they're sensitive. If Hashem wouldn't take care of it, from birth, from the time that he's a baby, who's watching over him, if not Hashem? So the Hashgacha is tremendous. Throughout our life, we have what to be thankful for. So therefore, he takes apart the Leviathan as an example, much more than the other animals. Look how I created this Leviathan. Look at his strength. Look at how the limbs are organized. Everything is Hashgacha. Everything is for a reason. I would like to add, even though I already gave some examples last week, just a few examples. Take a look at the giraffe. Tall animal. So if it's such a tall animal, the circulation of the blood has to travel a lot till it gets to the heart and back. It must have a strong heart. It sure does. It has double the pressure that we human beings have. It weighs about 25 pounds. The heart, 2 feet long. Yeah. Giraffe is something incredible. After a couple hours, the giraffe that's born can already stand on its own. They don't need to sleep so much, they're always standing. Why is that? Well, something to think about. I don't think they'll ever figure that one out. Why this animal and not that animal? Why so tall? A lot of good questions. Maybe one day we'll know. But it's a very interesting animal. So Hashem says, with the Leviathan, you can't really get too close to examine it, to figure it out, because it's a very powerful animal. But it's interesting, some of the description that he gives about the Leviathan is very interesting. He says, for example, that when it sneezes or lets out a certain vapor, that vapor that comes out, that it emits, it looks like a light. It looks like fire comes out of its mouth, smoke from its nostrils. And you say to yourself, really? I once read about dragons that had fire. And we think about those stories, by the way, as myths. I wouldn't discount them so fast. What did we say before? There are animals that existed once upon a time that do not exist today. Dinosaurs were very, very different in more than one way than animals that we know today. So, is it possible that there was something like that coming out? I mean, last week I showed you a cobra that spits out its venom several feet away. It could blind the animal, it could blind the human. All kinds of capabilities. So here, there's something that appears like a light, something that is similar, like fire. What could this be? I don't know for sure what this is all about, how to describe it, but take a look at what we do know today. There are fish that have or produce electricity. Did you know that?
Sure.
Like electric shocks, high voltage shocks. The eel is one example. There's a few more, but that is the more famous one, I guess. But there's also certain kinds of rays that have that ability, where they shock their prey. They pretty much paralyze them, and that's how they eat them. Then you have two interesting phenomena, one called biofluorescence and the other one called bioluminescence, where certain animals appear to be full of light. Frogs, certain kind of jellyfish, fireflies. Have you heard of a firefly? In the night, in the darkness that you can see. There's a slightly different method here of how they have this light. Either they somehow get something from the atmosphere, and because of that, of what they get and absorb, they appear to be full of light, luminous, or they actually produce it. It's a chemical reaction in their body that produces this bioluminescence. And certain animals, certain creatures have that. So could it be that? It could be. It could be some sort of chemical reaction that produces something similar to a light or a fire. Continues on to describe the Leviathan, this incredible fish. No other fish comes close to it. You cannot even hurt it with guns, harpoons. Nothing will hurt it. You can take all of it as though that harpoon was hay, he says. It wouldn't do any harm to him. Nothing can kill him. He says, even if the entire ocean would begin to boil, heat up, it wouldn't affect the Leviathan. He would just continue to swim. So this is approximately a little bit, I'm just giving over a little bit of the description of this great animal. So he finishes this chapter 41, by reminding us it doesn't make sense that Hashem should just rule over small creatures, that there should be no fear from the stronger ones. No, on the contrary, Hashem wants to instill fear. This is something that he wants there to exist. The fear that the small has from the big, and the fear that the weak has from the strong. That is where we see the greatness of Hashem. In other words, you will see, as I said earlier, Hashem's involvement when you see these extremes. You see this incredible large creatures. Who could make them? Where did they come from? Look at that blue whale that we spoke about, 100 foot. Wow. The biggest animal that ever existed, the blue whale, up to 100 feet. You look at that. Wow. So these things impress. So certain things that Hashem created in the world are necessary, not only because for some reason they need to be there, but it is through them that you will see Hashem's involvement. And as I said, with earthquakes. But what's this about earthquakes? I'm not going to get into in this lecture as to why earthquakes occur. I have another lecture about that. Why tornadoes, why earthquakes, why all kinds of terrible things occur where nature freaks out. Because that's what it is. Nature is freaking out. Everything is supposed to be perfect, beautiful. Didn't we just say harmony? Hashem created it that way. Something's wrong here. Yes, if man misbehaves, then the nature misbehaves. That's just in short. But what's interesting about an earthquake is that even people who are strong and powerful all of a sudden are afraid. They don't have any control over that. They think they can run away and live somewhere else where there are no earthquakes. There's going to be something else. All you need is the bite of a poisonous snake. There's always something. Hashem has many, many messengers. It frightens, therefore, even the most powerful ones. As the example I gave was with the mosquito, which kills so many people. And Titus, the emperor, that's how he died. He was a big shot. He thought nobody could beat him. Hashem says, I have a small messenger, a small soldier. It's just a small one. You'll see what it does to you. In chapter 42, finally we've come to the last chapter where Iyov says, that's it. I give up. I understand. I'm sorry. I admit. But he does say that he never intended to doubt Hashem. He always believed in Hashem. He always understood somewhat that Hashem is involved in this world. He did. The main reason that he gives as to why he put up all these arguments and argued with his friends and protested was because he wanted to be able to understand Hashem's creation philosophically and logically as best as possible, not just with blind faith. He says blind faith is not enough for everyone. Some people want to know more. How will I be able to convince them? I had to therefore be the devil's advocate here, if I can borrow that term. I had to argue. Hashem, reveal to me. If I can't figure this out on my own, which apparently I can't, then you have to reveal it to me somehow. I have to find out. Remember, all of this is before the Torah is given, before the Kabbalah is well known. Some knowledge is known, but not everything in detail yet. So he wants to have that ability to be able to figure things out in an intellectual way. Is it possible? I know that Hashem is capable of doing everything and anything. He knows everything. I know from the very beginning that he's involved, he's mashgiach. I did know that. I did know that to an extent man does have free will. And I did also know that man is rewarded somehow. Just know the details. Somehow, I always knew these things. Remember, all his friends were saying those things. So it's not like Iyov doesn't know. He's intelligent too. He knows a lot. So he didn't disagree completely. But he says, it's just not such a good idea in his mind. Hashem, why classify this, classify the information? Why hide it? Why keep it as a mystery? This is valuable information to know you, to know what's going on in the world. The basics. Why should it be hidden? Why should it remain a mystery? So therefore, if man on his own cannot reveal, cannot understand, cannot figure out these things, then reveal it to him. Teach him. And it is true, man on his own, we've been saying that all along, cannot understand and fathom the greatness of this creation. He doesn't live long enough. And even if he were to live 1,000 years, as the verse says, he wouldn't know much more. We're just limited. So Hashem, something so valuable, it makes sense that you should reveal it. And that's why I was asking for explanations. Because all that I've been saying is based on what I've heard. Now, Baruch Hashem, after you've revealed to me in a vision, it's clear. Everything is so clear to me. Now the knowledge that I have, the limited knowledge, but it's still a lot clearer than it was before because it's through a vision, through a prophetic vision. So obviously, if we were to have that, we would know a lot more, we would be more confident of what we know. But Hashem does not always allow for that. Think just for a second about the fact that we had once upon a time prophets, and today we don't. Why? Why were they taken away from us? So the Kabbalists explain there were different challenges at different times of history. In the past, the evil inclination was so strong with idol worshipping. There was witchcraft. Impurity was so powerful. You needed something to counter that, otherwise it wouldn't be fair. People would just be drawn to the left side, to the impure side. You have to make it fair. Hashem always made it fair. Okay, I made the impure side so powerful. People saw witchcraft. People saw witches doing what they did. They were false prophets too, by the way. It was difficult to remain righteous. So Hashem gave us prophets, real prophets, to counter that, to make a balance. Hashem took away the inclination towards idol worshipping. He took away the power of witchcraft. It still exists, by the way, in a limited way, but it's not so much seen. So the world, the westernized world, with all of the scientific advancement, doesn't see demons, or is not aware of witchcraft so much. There's no desire to worship idols, except for the idol of money. That is, of course, an idol that will never go away. So Hashem says, I'm not going to give them prophets now, because if I were to give them prophets now, when that side is weak, then everybody would rush to do the right thing. Remember, there needs to be free will. It has to be fair, balanced, just like in the animal kingdom as well. There has to be a balance by human beings so that they have real free will to choose between right and wrong. So now, Iyov, of course, Hashem did him the favor at that time in revealing to him through a vision all of this information, so he has a lot more clarity. So now it is clear to him that Hashem is clearly involved in everything that happens in this world, that the nefesh, that the soul of the human being continues to survive after it leaves this world, even though he had some knowledge about that, but he didn't know for sure. He didn't speak to someone that came back from there or had some sort of other evidence for that. Now he knows and he understands, yes, it's true, because that nefesh is something separate from the body. And if that's the case, I can now understand that the righteous will be rewarded immensely in the afterlife, because the fact that the nefesh, the spirit, goes back to its source, to its root, and connects with God the way it was in the very beginning, in the very start, that in itself is reward. That in itself demonstrates the fact that that nefesh that's in him, not only is it the essence of the human being and not the body, but it actually returns to where it came from. If that's the case, not only does it continue to survive, it's actually rewarded in the afterlife, because to reconnect is to be rewarded. To reconnect and to be close to God is the greatest reward of all. And he understands now how unimportant this physical body is. I said unimportant, but don't be disrespectful of the body, because the physical body, as the Kabbalah teaches, is a vessel for the soul. It's also rewarded. That is why there is resurrection. Who needs resurrection? Just bring the soul back without a body. No. The physical body worked hard. It worked hard to perform its work. It deserves some reward too. So for a number of years, we will have the Tchiyat HaMetim, where the body will rise again. Not of everyone, righteous people. And it will be rewarded to be able to see a beautiful world that they did not know. So he obviously doesn't give too much importance to this physical body, because he realizes that the main and the essence of the human being is really the nefesh, or the neshama. Still, the body has a purpose too. However, the success of the body, the money it makes in this lifetime, that is totally unimpressive compared to what? Compared to the pleasure that the tzaddikim, the righteous, will have in the afterlife. That moment in the afterlife where the neshama is able to enjoy in being in the proximity of the Shekhinah, the Divine Presence, even one moment there is worth much more, and it's greater pleasure than all the pleasures of this physical world. So, yes, this body has a function, but the pleasures of the body doesn't come close to the pleasures that the nefesh or the neshama will have in the afterlife. So therefore, I'm not going to bother even asking why does a tzaddik have such a hard time in this world. The physical body is having a hard time. As I've always said, imagine all those that were burned to ashes in Auschwitz. A lot of times they took those ashes, the Germans, and made soap from it. And one day, very soon, they will rise, and you will look at this individual that you were told he was made into soap or burned to ashes. I thought they just eliminated you. No, they didn't. The essence is in the Neshama. Hashem just gives him a new body. What's the big deal? We change suits. That's what the body is. It's a suit. You change your suit. It's worn out. Hashem says, I will replace that suit. It's not a big deal. I gave you a suit the first time around. I can do it a second time too. We don't see it, so we don't think about that. So he no longer has really any doubts or any questions about why the righteous suffer. Even though he doesn't have a clear answer from Hashem, Hashem never addressed that question because it's too complicated. I don't owe you an explanation, he says. Just trust me, there's a need for what I do. There's a need to have tzaddik. There's a need to have a person who's not doing the right thing be in this world as well. There's a need for them. And in the afterlife we understand a lot better, but here it's difficult. We're limited in our understanding. Towards the end of chapter 42, the very end of the book, Hashem now turns to the friends of Iyov. I'm upset at you. Upset at us? We defended you. You may have defended me, but you gave Iyov the wrong answers, the wrong explanations. You were basically focusing in accusing him of some sort of sin. That's where the focus was. Iyov, there must have been something wrong, even though you don't admit it. It just can't be otherwise. Hashem is perfect. Yes, Hashem is perfect. But why did you pick on him? It's not that. You were wrong. And not only were you wrong, you really didn't believe 100% in what you said. That's a problem. You yourself were not convinced, but so you were just trying to, comfort him. A lot of what the friend said was valid, but that's not the way you comfort an individual. Iyov himself, even though he may have argued, may have protested, he really never meant it 100%. We just saw why he said what he said. He wanted more clarity, that's all. He wanted to figure things out intellectually, not just through faith. Faith is good, but for some people it's not enough. They need proof. Can we try to figure this out intellectually or not? If not, Hashem help us. But you were not very effective because you were not 100% sincere. You did not focus on what really is important. You told him all kinds of things that don't have anything to do with reality, because he was not such a bad person. He was righteous to begin with. So therefore, Hashem instructs them to bring sacrifices to atone for their sin, that they misjudged him. For that, you have to bring a sacrifice. And then he turns to Iyov and says, and now you pray for them, because in some ways they insulted you too. Pray for them. Forgive them. And Iyov does that. He prays for them and he forgives them. And as a result of that, Hashem gives Iyov back everything he had. All the possessions and more, double. Children, boys and girls. Now there's an interesting opinion that says that when Hashem gave him all that, he really gave him what he had before. The original children, because they were never killed. They never died. The Satan, who started this whole thing, took them away somewhere. We don't know where. It sent messengers that they're no longer alive. And here, they came back to him. So even though it says that he gave names to the girls, which appears to be that perhaps they were new children, the girls were more beautiful than ever. So as a result of their extra beauty, he gave them names. So that's just an opinion. But it could very likely be that Hashem simply rewarded him or returned him everything that he had and more. So for the next 140 years that he lived, a total of 210, he had a beautiful life, a comfortable life, where everything was restored. It's a very interesting ending. It's a beautiful ending, and we wish every movie would end like that, right? But that's how the world actually will end. When Mashiach comes, we will see everything will be returned to us. Everything that was taken from us. All the pain will go away, and it will be just like a bad dream. It's a beautiful thing when you finally realize you didn't lose anything at all. As the verse says, we will laugh, we will smile, we will rejoice and be so happy. It will be a beautiful thing. So I think that the ending here is important, not just because that's the story of Iyov, but it says a lot about the human being. All is well that ends well, they say in English. In other words, sometimes we suffer. Life is not easy. But eventually at some point we will be able to look back and realize how we benefited as long as we did the right thing. Just like to finish with what Rabbi Yochanan said. Rabbi Yochanan used to review the Book of Iyov from time to time. Powerful book. And when he would finish the book, this is what he would say. Sof Adam lamut. In the end, man dies. Sof behema l'shchita. In the end, an animal is taken to slaughter. It's a kosher animal, of course. In other words, whether you're a man, human being, or whether you're an animal, in the end, we all die. Therefore, ashrei mishigadal b'torah ve'amalo b'torah. Fortunate is a person who during his life studied Torah, immersed himself in Torah, grew up according to the ways of Torah. And in doing so, of course, he gave Hashem pleasure. Hashem was proud of him. Gadal b'shem tov and niftar b'shem tov. He grew up having a good name, and he died having a good name. On him, the verse says, in Kohelet, Shlomo Melech says, Tov shem mishem en tov, v'yom hamavet b'yom hivaledo. A good name, a good reputation is best. It's better than anything else, better than the most precious and fragrant oils. And the day of death is better than the day of birth. Wow, the day of death is better than the day of birth. Yeah, because when a baby comes into this world, we don't know, they're cute. What's going to be with him? Is he going to be a righteous individual, or will he be a monster, God forbid, a bad person? Will people benefit from him, or will he hurt people? Yes, it could go either way. A lot will depend on the education that he gets. A lot will depend on our prayers. A lot will depend on the kind of soul he has, because after all, we have free will. So it's a very stormy sea out there. When can we say, thank God, we're home safe? Not through life, not at birth, when life is over and we eulogize the individual. We hope now he's safe, because while he was alive, anything could happen. Not physically. He may do the wrong things. So if an individual lived his life and only contributed towards making this place a better place and earned himself a good name, he has succeeded.